Hi everyone, so today I want to talk about Immortals and why I really hope that they stay together. I've been week 2 of Worlds is coming to a conclusion. Unfortunately, we've seen that TSM have not made it out of group stages, and it's just caused me to reflect on the year for North America and Western regions. And especially when I consider that there are rumors that Team Liquid, who recently were acquired and got an influx of capital, are trying to pick up Reignover and Adrian for their new team in 2017. On top of that, there was a comment by Huni where he said that he was considering going back to Korea, or he was interested in it. So if the Huni Reignover dynamic duo is going to be split up, or the team is going to go its separate ways, particularly when you hear like the CEO Noah, who said that he wants the players to explore other options and then come back to the team. They wanted to stay together, but they're not going to force them to stay together. It's just caused me to reflect on the team and their impact on the whole region, and then impact that it's had at Worlds. And I really hope the team doesn't split up. I hope they stay together for 2017, and I'm going to discuss why. But to really just understand that, I want to go back to the start. So the start of the year, Immortals was put together with Huni and Reignover, who had achieved incredible success in Europe, done very well at Worlds, and wanted a new challenge in NA. They went over, and the other members of the team were Adrian, who people had noticed and had been successful, but hadn't been on a top tier team yet. But you know, the skills and the abilities were there. A lot of people noticed. Pobelter, who had been released from CLG after winning the summer split in 2015, and who had performed decently. And then Wild Turtle, who had been released from TSM after not a great year, especially end of year. It's a very interesting team, I think, in that Pobelter is someone who's been in the scene for quite a long time, but who hadn't necessarily performed. But he still had a lot of, a lot of fans, a lot of analysts, and a lot of pros believed in him and saw the talent that was there. Obviously, Huni and Reignover don't need any introduction. Adrian was given his big shot when, a lot of people said he was the carry, he was a great player. This was his chance to shine with other great players. And Wild Turtle, who is Wild Turtle, and I think has so much history and ups and downs, and his aggressive play style. People weren't entirely sure, like, this is a team of superstars. I mean, Wild Turtles won championships. Huni and Reignover dominated Europe, got to semi-finals. Pobelter has been to Worlds multiple times, finally had won with NA region with CLG. So it's a team that has veterans who have experienced success and shouldn't crumble, but we've also seen how other super teams have fallen apart and just haven't had the chemistry. And the organization itself thought, okay, we'll do well, but they didn't think they'd be so dominant as they were. They went 17-1 in Spring Split. No one challenged them. They lost one game to CLG, but apart from that, they were head and shoulders above everyone else. They really just, the way they played the game was beautiful. Everyone was so in sync. I think they just had the same ethos to the game, and it really helped unlock players. Wild Turtle went back to his old form, super aggressive. Adrian understood his role and helped support the team. Pobelter also facilitated the team's success. Reignover was he set things up, and Huni carried and played incredibly. It was a team that was happy for Wild Turtle or Huni to jump in, because everyone else was right behind them. And they were so fast-paced, so aggressive, but in a smart way. It wasn't just blind aggression, and they really dominated and did so well. Unfortunately, playoffs came along, they faced up against TSM and lost 3-0. Now, as it's been discussed a lot, and I do believe they just had a misread on the meta. They played Karma support 3 times, got mid in game 2, and Lucian and Graves, which is the famous one, and it didn't really work out. I think part of this is because of the way the team works. And actually, World and Green did a video on Immortals at the end of like reflecting on the whole year, and particularly summer, and why they stumbled. And I think that's a very good video, and I would encourage a lot of people to watch it, because I think it's very insightful, and I agree with really his opinions and his conclusions. I think the thing is that from, you know, what we see on stage, Immortals is a very aggressive team, and this also happens in scrims. In fact, like many teams, scrims are much more aggressive for anyone, but I think Immortals take it to another level. And they've always been a team that isn't afraid to experiment. They sometimes pick unusual things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but they're not afraid to go outside the meta, and sometimes that means that they're ahead of the meta. And I think it's been part of the reason that they've been successful. But then when you consider these unusual picks, and you tie it with their feast or famine playstyle, it created a situation where they were picking Lucian and Graves, and in scrims they were dominating with it. They were getting so many kills, and this hyper-aggressiveness from the team and then the other teams meant that by 20 minutes, let's say they had 20 kills, and they were just able to win games. But they have a playstyle and an approach to scrims where they either at 20 minutes are so far ahead of the other teams that they just dominate and win, or they're so far behind that they just surrender and remake the game. But this kind of leads to some false conclusions. So they were picking these champs and these characters and these team comps, and obviously in scrims they were doing incredibly well, and it just allowed them to close out the games very quickly. They managed to dominate. But then once on stage and they were faced against other teams who are more defensive, who have kind of figured out how to play against it, they weren't prepared for what happens when they don't get so far ahead. What if they're only a little bit ahead? What if they're even? Or even worse, what if they're behind? And this is what happened, is that they were in a situation where suddenly on stage, the other team isn't being so aggressive, so they can't get as dominating a lead. And they had a slight lead, but TSM understood that they could just hold back. And even though they were a little bit behind, once those picks dropped off, and the other picks like Maokai came online, that was it. And Immortals hadn't, because of their approach to the game, because of the way scrims are done, hadn't really encountered this. And I think that's a bit of a flaw in the coaches, the analysts, and the way that they approach it, because they really should be reflecting on that, and scrims should be there to practice many different combinations. But this is an interesting thing, actually, as an aside, why sometimes you see teams picking the same comp multiple times. They might pick it the first time and it fails, but they aren't entirely sure. Did it fail because the champions or the comp wasn't good? Or is it us as players who failed in the execution, or something that happened in game that, you know, doesn't normally happen, which caused it to be behind? So they'll try it again, and if it succeeds, they know, okay, the comp is right, or so on. But they tried it again, it didn't work, and that was it. The end for Immortals in Spring Split. They went on to dominate Team Liquid in the 3rd, 4th place matchup, and you know, they played a lot of tank tops. They understood that Echo was there, so they showed their ability to adapt and recognize what they had done wrong, corrected it, and went back to the regular season domination. Then the format changed. We went into best of 3s. Now, one of the criticisms from Spring was that we were playing best of 1s, and people were saying, well, maybe Immortals can't adapt over a longer series. They didn't. Immortals adapted beautifully. They went 16-2 in the regular summer split. They dominated everyone. They beat everyone but TSM. TSM, who had brought on Weldon, who were basically practicing more than anyone else, who had also a very strong team, who had improved significantly over the course of Spring Split. And I think TSM really were a great team. But I think that Immortals were instrumental in elevating TSM and actually elevating the whole region. And this is the point. This is why I really hope Immortals stay together, because if I don't, they remind me, actually, Immortals remind me of Cloud9 when they first came in. When Cloud9 first came in, they understood the macro game of League of Legends so well. They understood the objective play so well that they dominated the region. They destroyed everyone, and it was easy for them. But because they were so great and so good, other teams started to study them, they started to understand, they learned, and the whole region as a result of Cloud9 got better at macro game. And I think this is what Immortals did. They played so well that other teams started to look at how they were playing and adapt to it, copy it, learn from it, react to it, and it elevated everyone. And I think because of Immortals and Spring Split, they helped CLG. I think they are one of the reasons why CLG managed to get North America's best ever international result at MSI, where they came in second place. They won Spring Split, and at MSI they came in second, right after SKT, who were playing perfect, near perfect League of Legends. So we get to the Summer Split. Immortals again, 16-2. Doesn't matter that it's a best of 3 format. They beat everyone apart from TSM. We get to playoffs, and unfortunately, again, they fall in the semi-finals against Cloud9. But this time it's 3-2. The matchup is not one-sided, it isn't dominant, they got outplayed by Cloud9, but Cloud9 was playing very well, and I think that, like, Impact being on fire throughout the whole of playoffs, no one really expected that, and he was so dominant, especially compared to his split during the normal season, the regular season, that it was unexpected, and Immortals weren't prepared for it. But they still challenged Cloud9 and took them to Game 5. And I think what's very interesting is, even where Cloud9 was ahead, there were moments where Immortals would see an opportunity and just pull the trigger. There was no hesitation, and it's the beauty of Immortals, really. They would jump in, and they really challenged. They made Cloud9 work for it. Unfortunately, during the Gauntlet run, it wasn't as successful. They lost to Cloud9 3-1. The unthinkable happened. Immortals, who went 17-1 in the Spring Split, came third in Spring, and who went 16-2 in Summer, was not going to Worlds. It was a real shame. Not that I think they deserve to go to Worlds more than the other teams, but I think they were, everyone expected them at Worlds. Everyone was excited for it, and it's a shame that they aren't there. But I think it's a learning opportunity, really, for the team and for the region. Because when they reflect on the year, I think that where they stumbled and they lost, and this is again going back to the World in Green kind of video on Immortals, it wasn't the players. It was things outside. It was the analysts, it was the coaches, it was the support staff. It was the way that they approached scrims, or the way that they approached the game, and how they prepared their players for situations inside the game. And I think that's something that can be fixed quite easily. But what I want to focus on is it was the players' execution. The way they played the game was incredible. And the way they played together has such a beautiful chemistry. And it's so natural. They all have this aggressive approach to the game. They help elevate each other and make each other better. Often, it's said that, Huni is so good because of Raynova. But Raynova is so good because of Huni. I think it goes hand in hand. League of Legends has become very team-orientated. And I think that's because of the way Riot has taken it. And as a result of that, when you look at Immortals, they work so well and they've been so dominant because of the way the team works together. They are so comfortable with one another. They seem to be very good terms outside of the game. And I just think that they're a wonderful team that have challenged the field. Now, whilst they have stumbled in playoffs at the end, as I mentioned, I don't think this is due to the players. I think it's due to other factors. So that chemistry, that combination of players shows success. And whilst a flash in the pan, like as great as it would be for them to maybe just win in one go, and it's happened before where we've had a meta change or a team is just on fire and suddenly they weren't very good in the normal split and they've suddenly dominated, done very well, and won either a region or something else. What Immortals have is consistency. They consistently beat every other team in best of ones in spring and best of threes in summer. They showed that they are as good as any other team. They beat Cloud9, they beat CLG, they lost to TSM admittedly, but that's one team. And to be honest, if TSM can lose to Immortals at the start of the year and get good enough to be at the end of the year so dominant, Immortals can do it as well. And that's my point, is they have the ability, they have knowledge, they have the skills to win, and that's what we've seen across the whole split. 33-3. I think, if I did that math correctly, I hope I did. 33-3. Those victories it's dominant. And that consistency, that consistent winning shows a lot about the team. They're good enough. They're one of the best. And if they can fix these small stumbling blocks at the end, I really think that the team will only get better. And they've elevated the North American region to a point where, you know, last year, if we look at 2015 and we look at the North American teams, they really weren't great. They really weren't. And they were, to be honest, kind of dismissed going into Worlds. And I know people were maybe doing a bit of revisionism. And we have famously the 0-10 week 2. But when we look at this year's teams, they're much stronger. Whatever the results that have happened, the fact that they're not instantly dismissed, the fact that when, and Monty was saying this, for all the hate he might get in Korean fanboying, he was saying he could see TSM getting out of Group D. He was saying that they had flaws, but he also said that they did things very well. And we have things like CLG coming second at MSI. These are the sorts of things that can only happen when a region is elevated. And like, you know, we had the Jat tweet longer where he talks about how the gap is getting smaller. And that doesn't mean that NA is, or Western world is as good as Korea. What it means is that we're getting closer to being as good. We're starting to take games off them. We're starting to be respected a bit more. And I think the gap took a significant jump with Cloud9, and I think Immortals have forced the gap to take another significant jump. And they should, as players and as an organization, I think they should feel very proud of themselves. I think they should look back on this year and feel like they accomplished something and that they did perform, and that they should be hungry to do even better next year. That their goals, they shouldn't lose sight of their goal of getting to Worlds and pushing the region to be better. And I think Immortals and TSM, I look forward to them next year, but I think it would, if Immortals goes their separate ways, I'm not sure that they will be able to find a combination of 5 players who have the skills, mentality, and approach to the game that work so well together like Immortals does. So I get, you know, that's why I really hope that Immortals stays together, because I think they're an exciting team. I think they're a great team. I think they're a team that have proven they can really challenge anyone, and going their separate ways I think will only weaken them individually, whereas if they stay together and the organization fixes the problems outside of the game that was holding them back, and they've already indicated that they're willing to and that that's what they're working towards, then I'm only excited to see what heights they reach in 2017. Thanks guys, and I'd love to see your comments and thoughts below. Please feel free to tweet at me, and if you like the video and want to see more, please subscribe to the channel. Alright then, cheers.